And once you understand the systemic issue, then you can see automatically where the systemic solution lies. But if you don't visit there from that paradigm level, you'll never see it. You can't. So, and then I'll finish with my proposal. Okay? Because I've gotten the rule never to talk about the problem unless I have at least a bit of a solution. All right? Now, Rubin said it nicely. No one saw it coming, right? Queen Elizabeth asked you, how come nobody saw? Nobody warned about this, right? Greenspan says, oh, well, gee whiz, unless you change human nature, we're going to have other crashes. They're all saying the same thing. Okay? We don't understand. Now, the monetary blind spot is an accumulation of four layers. That's why it is so difficult to go through it. The first one is history, old history, about 5,000 years of history, to be precise. And I'll explain that in a few minutes why. The second one is ideological polarization. We've gone through Cold War, which has polarized ideologically everything we talk about economics and social sciences, okay? And it has an effect on what we can see. The third one is an academic taboo. It is not a good idea in an academic career to touch the money system, and I explain to you why. And finally, there's a lobbycracy. And the best lobbies are the ones that you don't know are lobbies. Okay? Fine. So that's what I'll show you. All of them accumulate, one over the other. So let's start with the beginning. If you put one box in which you put all patriarchal societies in history, China, sorry, did I say this? All patriarchal societies in one box. Okay. Can we kind of shut this off, please? Can we cut this? Oh, thank you. Well, I obviously seem to be. Okay. You will have a few common denominators in all patriarchal societies, and I'll explain what they are. By the way, the best way to recognize what a patriarchal society is, the rule of thumb, look at what their vision of the divine is. If the vision of the divine is a man all by himself with a beard sitting invisible in the sky, you're dealing with a patriarchal society. Okay? Fine. All patriarchal societies have a monopoly of a centralizing currency with positive interest rates. Okay? Which is a concentration device to the top. People who have resources get more resources. It is actually, I claim that it is that model that made the Industrial Revolution possible. No, but the Industrial Revolution hasn't occurred by someone starting a steel mill in his garage. Or starting, with a train around his garden. I mean, you need to have massive concentration of resources. And this is still true today. That little computer, the chip in there, that little chip costs $1 billion to produce. That's not something you have come as pocket money somewhere. Okay? So that's the a positive thing. On the other side, our current version of that money system has created the boom and bust cycles. They're directly related to the money system. Okay? The second thing that it has to do with concentrations of wealth. Right? And finally, unsustainable behavior, short-term thinking, is all part of that. The other civilizations that didn't do that didn't have that problem. Now, you'll say, what is the other solution? It's matrifocal societies. I'm using the word matrifocal, not matriarchal. Matriarchy has never existed. Matriarchy would be a society in which males have the role of procreation and no other. Okay? That only existed in the imagination of the Greeks in the form of the Amazons, of which there has never been a society that they have been able to identify, archaeologically or otherwise. Matrifocal societies are societies which honor feminine values. Okay? Fine. Egypt is a good example. We have one in our society in Western Europe from the 10th to the 13th century, when courtly love was the story, when the women's rights were higher than 50 years ago, okay? Where the standard of living of women was higher than, where actually the City of London has an interesting episode. You have a museum of the City of London. They have the bones of people that they unearthed from prehistoric times, and they made an analysis of the size of the people over time. Would you believe that the women were the tallest in the history of London in the 12th century? A centimeter taller than today. The male has only caught up with the Londoner male of the Saxon times in the last 30 years. That's a little different vision, isn't it? Anyway, matrifocal societies, guess what? They have another money system. No, it is not a monopoly of another kind of currency. It is a dual currency system. Two types of money. One, which is identical to the patriarchal one, and actually very often the one of the patriarchal societies, literally. In the case of Egypt, they used gold rings. Used in Mesopotamia, they used Greek coins. You find Greek coins in Egypt. That is to trade with people you don't know. Long distance trade. People you're indifferent with. And you have another currency, which is used locally, what people themselves are creating, which is done in sufficiency rather than in scarcity, and which has a completely different dynamic. They have a dual currency system. Okay? Now, one of the things that did is it made it economic stability for centuries. And I'm meaning for centuries. In the case of Egypt, we're talking 1,600 years. Not bad for a stable economy. We did have general well-being, the little people, the highest standard of living, as I said, in the Middle Age, in Europe, was in the Middle Ages. Rather funny, isn't it? For the ordinary people. And they had sustainability. They built stuff to last forever. If you don't believe it, go and look at the cathedrals. All the cathedrals were built in a time period where they had dual currency systems in Europe. Okay? So that's the first level. We have been used to think that a monopoly of centralizing currency is the only way of doing things, as in all other patriarchal societies. Second level, ideological polarization. For about 100 years, and certainly since World War II, since we were born, any one of us, I would say, we have been living with that polarization between communism and capitalism. Okay? And communism is about public ownership, governmental initiatives, and central planning, at least in the Soviet interpretation of it, which of course is not to do with Marxism, that's another story. And capitalism is about private ownership, private initiatives, and market. There are libraries full, there are literally hundreds of thousands of studies on what makes the difference between them. Right? Okay, however, and each of the schools, each one of those ideological fronts has created sub-schools that fight each other. You know, we have our Keynesians and our neoliberals, we have our Austrians and our classical in the capitalist model, and on the Soviet side you have Marx and Engels, Marx, Leninist, and Trotskyist and Maoist and all that good stuff. And those people fight among each other and produce massive amount of studies of what's different between them. However, again, there's one thing, see, they fight each other, okay? And nicely internally. Now, the key thing is there's something in common, which is never talked about, and guess what it is? It is the money system. The only difference between the Soviet system and the capitalist system was that the banks were owned by the government. But they used bank debt money with interest as everybody else. Same thing in China. So we have been blind, ideologically, by what is common between all the schools. That's the second level. Third one, academic taboo. How many of you have degrees in economics? Okay? Had courses in economics? All right, good. How many of you know about the Chartalist school? About what? Chartalist.